Good morning. I'm Anna Marie de la Vega. This is Focus. And again, we have David Wood. He's a licensed therapist and regional director of Family Care Center, the largest outpatient behavioral health provider in Tennessee. And the reason we're talking with him is because he's been taking us on a journey of the mental health issues, the mental health stages, the things that we go through in life, and how our mental needs can change and how to kind of stay on top of things and not just kind of go under like a lot of people feel that they do.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us again, David.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We talked about parents kind of losing that role of mom and dad as the kids grow up and get out of the house and things to do. And what about, let's go back into other people who've lost their roles, who are no longer filling that role specifically, and they identified as this role is me.
Sure.
When somebody retires.
Yeah. Or changing careers. If somebody who maybe experiences a workplace injury or some kind of injury and they have to change careers, or the industry has changed or shifted because of new technologies.
Sure.
There's lots of fears around things like AI or advancements in technology where careers have to change and shift, and people who have made a good living, not only is it providing security and financial security and provision, but a sense of identity because maybe they're very successful in it and they really enjoy it. And then they have to go through a change, and maybe starting from scratch, or people who have maybe worked their whole lives in a certain particular field or career, and then they're retiring, and what does that look like? Interestingly, even when I was in graduate school, the majority of my classmates in graduate school for counseling psychology, many of them were moms and dads whose children had grown and they were changing careers, or some of them were starting their first careers. They were a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad for a while.
Whoa.
And they were getting out into a new industry and a new field, and a lot of them felt overwhelmed. A lot of people go through what we kind of call imposter syndrome, where maybe they feel a little out of their scope or out of their depth, or they feel like maybe I'm a fraud and somebody's going to find out I've been faking my way through this. And truthfully, we all end up feeling that way from time to time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different seasons in life or different phenomenon that it can occur where many of us will feel at some point in our life that loss of identity through certain seasons and changes. And I think, as we previously spoke about, it's so important for people to remember, just remembering and reminding yourself that grief is appropriate and healthy and necessary.
Because people will say, oh, no, you'll get something better. Don't worry about it. I mean,
yeah,
well-meaning
people around you will encourage and kind of, or, they're coming from that perspective of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and kind of get after it. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for that. Absolutely. But there's also a time and a place for it's okay to kind of let yourself fall apart for a minute. This massive change, this season in life is over. There's a chapter of this book that is your life that's just ended, and you've loved it.
Yeah.
And there were these wonderful, beautiful things that you got to experience and go through, like raising kids and, or a great career that you were successful and it provided for the family, and now that's ending.
What do you do?
What do you do? And for a lot of us, and I can speak to this from a perspective of a man, we get a lot of identity through our careers as a provider, or this is what I do. And
that's right.
We ask that question a lot, hey, I'm Dave. Oh, hi, Anna Marie. What do you do?
Yeah.
It's like the first question, right?
What do you do? Because that's who you are, and that's who I'm going to judge you as.
Yeah.
I do nothing now because my musician career is over. I mean, what do you do? What do you answer?
I sit at home and do what?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so there's fear around that. And, that's one of the stages later in life is defined by, productivity or stagnation. And we go through this season of life where we want to be very productive. We need to be to provide for ourselves financially and have this structure and this sense of security. But if that's been established and you no longer need to work, or you're moving into a retirement age, or just out of necessity, whether it's health concerns or industry or whatever, that's no longer an option. What do you do?
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, we experience, well, then who am I? And there's
Wow.
that necessary grief, Very commonly we see in older, especially males, when they retire, they go back to work.
Really?
They're retired for a little while and they find this is not for me. They try to go play golf or they pick up a new hobby, and they find I'm missing more than anything that feeling of productivity.
Oh, wow.
Or this sense of identity. I was really good at that. At the office, I was someone. At home, I'm, just getting told to clean up after myself,
Yeah,
or, stop making messes, or,
wow.
And I've actually even heard from women, from wives, like, they got to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
They're driving me nuts.
Yeah.
They're
sitting there, a lump on the sofa.
Yeah,
whatever.
they're dissatisfied or maybe even get a little bit depressed because they're not productive. And so, and the antidote for that may not necessarily be, well, you should go back to work. Because one, that may not be an opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Two, it may be hard on your body, whatever you were doing. Like maybe that's not actually a very realistic thing. And, in our culture, I think Americans, we tend to kind of pride ourselves on our work ethic,
Yeah.
I think it's been very beneficial in some ways from like an economic perspective, but I mean, it goes without saying like that shouldn't be the ultimate priority,
Well, how do we figure out something else? Because if we're going to be productive, we need to find out something that we are passionate about doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or is meaningful or what is my purpose?
Whoa.
What is my purpose now? And just because the outlet is changing doesn't mean that you don't have a lot to offer.
Oh.
And, folks can move into consulting, if they're in an industry that would benefit from their experience.
Yep.
Awesome. Do that. Start a new endeavor, but if you're beyond that season of life, cultivating those relationships and developing hobbies or ways to spend your time that you're still growing, that you're still growing, something that you're still able to set goals or get better at or improve yourself and work on yourself, so that you don't experience this feeling of stagnation.
Is it possible that you can take part of what made you good at your career that you identified with? Maybe, can you take maybe part of it and spin it into something else, or
Sure.
find a different outlet for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many nuances there and complexities depending on, what a person did professionally or how that translates into retirement years. And, there's a lot of nuance to that. But I think a person probably needs to be intentional and take a step back and try to get creative about like, what does this look like? What does this look like? Or talk to someone else about it. Seek out wisdom, seek out advice. If there's people around you, they've been retired and enjoying it for a couple of years, take them out for coffee. Ask them, tell them, I retired 6 months ago. I hate it. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm letting people down. I feel unproductive, maybe even feeling kind of depressed.
Yeah.
What are you doing? How did you do this? What do I do? I feel unproductive. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling for me because I've strived for the last however many decades to be productive. And I don't know how to rest. And I think a lot of us feel that or we have that experience at a more micro level. I do anyways. When I go on vacation, I'm not great on vacation because I'm not a person who can just go sit on a beach for a week and do nothing.
Yeah.
That sounds awful to me. That sounds awful to me. I have this theory. I actually think it's a big reason why they put gyms in hotel rooms. Because I'll tell you what, if I work out and I'm doing something a little bit productive and hard for 45 minutes, an hour each day I'm on vacation, I get to enjoy I get to actually feel like I can enjoy and do nothing.
Whoa.
On vacation then, right?
So you don't have to find another full-time gig. You can do something.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a lot of times where that's just not even feasible.
Yeah,
Depending on the health or your current state, for a person who's in that later season of life, that may not be feasible. And they need an outlet. They need that purpose. And what they find purposeful. It's possibly changed on the surface, but underlying, it's still going to be the same. Through all those years of work, what were you doing? Well, you were serving your family.
Oh.
You were providing for your family. You may have done a career that didn't feel at the surface very meaningful or profoundly important, or even that you felt very passionate about, but you were providing a stable and steady like home and providing for your family.
Yeah.
And you can still do that. You can still maintain that. And what you are providing for your family may come in different forms now, but you're still serving and providing for family and those around you.
Like, I feel like it would be hard for many men to ask another guy for advice like that, because it seems that men have a harder time admitting, anything other than, oh, it's great. Everything's great.
Yeah. And there's definitely a misnomer about that, that us men hold. We foolishly assume that people will perceive us as like frail or weak if we ask for insight or advice.
Yeah.
Even though, and this is true in my experience, anytime a man has come to me and asked or has exhibited vulnerability to me,
yeah,
I've never perceived that as weakness. It always actually comes across as confidence. Because when somebody comes to you and says, hey, here's this thing I'm struggling with and I feel afraid about it,
yeah,
they don't sound vulnerable and scared and frail. They sound really confident because they're being open about something that is a vulnerability.
And they're doing something about it.
Oh, it takes courage to be vulnerable.
Oh.
And we all know that, even unconsciously. We know that it takes courage and like bravery to be like scared or fearful and then like shed a light on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like hiding is weakness.
Mm-hmm.
But coming out and being transparent and open about that. And don't get me wrong, there's probably certain conversations or certain topics that we should be having with certain people. We want to be decisive about who we're sharing things with, right?
Yes.
Like if I'm struggling with something that may be injurious for me to share with my wife, maybe I'm going to go talk to a professional about it, or maybe I'm going to go talk to one of my brothers or my dad about it.
Yep.
Right? I'm going to be intentional about who I share and who I'm vulnerable with.
And people who that they have their stuff together enough that they can give you advice that will help you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to go ask for advice or insight from somebody who hasn't demonstrated that they can successfully navigate these issues that I'm currently having.
Good way to put it.
Right?
Yeah.
When I'm talking to high school or college age kids or, things like that. The example I always use is, I wouldn't, if I'm failing math class and my best friend is failing math class, I'm not going to ask my best friend for help in math.
Oh, right.
Right.
Okay.
So it's the old adage, never trust the skinny chef.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you said that a lot of people who retire go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
I do notice that because what did you call that stage? You're doing what now? The deciding about your productivity and your value and
yeah. So there is ego. So in that final stage of life, we call it the maturity stage. It's ego integrity versus despair.
Oh.
Yeah, and so that's that. Getting very reflective, looking back on life. Am I satisfied with the time that I had and the time that I spent?
Mm-hmm.
And as we previously talked about, some people can kind of get stuck in a loop when they feel a sense of regret. They feel like coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah.
In my experience, most often the antidote for that is, well, you're still here. What are you doing with the time you have now?
Whoa!
Right.
Say that again.
So you're still here. What are you doing right now, today, looking forward? Yes, the amount of time you have and your awareness to how much time you have is much greater, right? And we talked about this a few episodes ago of people in their late teens, early 20s. They struggle, just like small children, struggle to conceptualize the future.
Yes.
What I do right now today has an impact on David or Anna Marie in the future.
Yeah.
Later in life, they don't struggle with that. They know full well the decisions I make in the present impact my future.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're in this perspective of, yeah, but I don't have much of a future left. I don't have a lot of time left.
Oh.
I've lived 70, 80 years. My time is limited, and I wish I could change how I spent my time. And that becomes their focus. And it's like, well, you might have some real genuine reasons to feel some regret. Maybe there were opportunities you didn't take. Maybe there were hurts that you feel like you haven't gotten over. If that's the case, you got to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Quit hiding, because you can't hide and heal at the same time. Talk to somebody about it, because you do have time left, but it may not be a lot, but that makes it all that much more valuable. And don't waste that.
Don't waste it on thinking and mulling over something you can't change.
Exactly.
You can't change.
Exactly.
Whoa.
And so, there should be an increased sense of urgency. And a lot of times, and this is true for a lot of folks in that stage of life, they've experienced loss.
Yeah.
They've gone through grief. They've lost loved ones. They've been through it. A lot of them are real good at grieving. They're not new to it.
Oh.
They've done it plenty. And so a lot of times they're actually pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And they can speak really great wisdom and insight in how to navigate it well. But sometimes their little season of grief there might be real abbreviated, because they know what they're doing.
Huh.
Yeah. They've been through it.
Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun.
So then is it easier for an older person when you have somebody come in for therapy? Does it seem easier for older people to go, like, you kind of say, like, look at, what are you doing now? You're still here. What are you doing now? Looking forward. Does it seem easier for them to go, oh?
Yes, I would say in my experience working with like a lot of adults in geriatrics, geriatrics tend to be much more solution oriented.
Oh.
And they do come in for less sessions.
Whoa.
Yeah.
More solution oriented.
Yeah, they're more tend to be more solution oriented. They don't want any kind of like soft, padding or let's pussyfoot around the topic. It's like, what are we doing here? Let's get after it. Yep. Yeah, it's really fun. Yeah.
If you're just joining us, this is David Wood. He's a licensed therapist and the regional director of Family Care Center. I can't believe we got the big guy to come talk to us. It's the largest outpatient behavioral health provider in Tennessee. And one of the things that we talk about too is the grief part, going through it, thinking about it. But you mentioned people going back to work before they get to that insight, or even as they get to that final phase of their life. Is that maybe when some people go and find a job that's just fun?
Yeah, just a job to do something. I always think of like the Walmart greeter.
Yes.
Or somebody working at a drive-through or things like that. And I do want to say this, like, there are, of course, older folks who are working out of necessity, out of financially, and that's hard. And there are folks who are never going to be able to retire. And that's really hard, and definitely worth acknowledging that the ability to retire is not afforded to everybody. And, we don't need to get into a conversation on economics and all those things, right? That's not my area of expertise anyways. But I did want to acknowledge that there may be people who are listening where, maybe they're in that season and they would love to retire.
Whoa.
And that opportunity has never been afforded to them, and they're not going to be able to. And that's worth acknowledging.
What are you able to tell them? What are you able to do to help them just not be depressed and not? Well,
it's kind of similar of like, if you're finding yourself in that situation, and I don't know what my own future brings. I may not ever be in a position to retire either. I don't know what that's going to look like. And so there's a lot of uncertainty about the future, especially for younger generations. And, and that idea of retirement seems less and less feasible, I think, for a lot of generations nowadays.
You just tell them it is what it is. I mean,
well, it's
when someone's in a situation that they feel like they can't get out of. Are you able to help them kind of troubleshoot some solutions or look at strengths or what?
It may be out of necessity, and then and so on the one hand, it is what it is. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that it has to be suffering. It doesn't mean that it's not without meaning or purpose. Like, if you're working hard, no matter your age, to afford yourself self-sustainability or provide for yourself or your family, it doesn't matter even what you're doing. That's honorable.
Yeah. It's
very honorable. It doesn't matter if you're flipping burgers or, you have some executive career role. It's an honorable thing to work and provide for yourself and care for those around you and provide for those around you. And if you're not hearing that, I'm sorry that you're not hearing that on a daily basis and experiencing that level of respect and honor for that. But it should be more prevalent. Yeah. And so just kind of getting that set right there of like, keep doing it.
Yeah.
Keep doing it because people see that, people see you, and it's highly valued and respected. But also, no matter what you're doing, you can make it miserable for yourself, or you could make it great. And it depends on how much effort you're putting into it.
So we do have the power. We got the power.
Absolutely.
Make it miserable or make it great.
Yeah.
With our attitude, our thought process.
With your attitude, with your effort, if you're intentional and you're like, all right, I'm gonna see how good I can do this thing that I'm doing for a job. And if it's just a job, it just pays the bills. I don't find it meaningful, whatever. You can still choose to find meaning in it. And it's because one, it's meeting these specific financial or economic needs that I or my family have.
I'm crushing it.
That right there is absolutely meaningful.
Got it.
But if the specific job itself doesn't necessarily just organically feel like it's meaningful or pulling at your heartstrings, it doesn't feel profoundly important to you, it's just a job, you can still do it exceptionally well and feel proud of the effort and the focus that you put into it. Or you can feel resentful about having that job, having to have that job. You can complain about the current state of everything, and you can be miserable while you suffer through it.
Oh, wow.
It's a choice. And I know that there is a whole topic of fair or unfair. People get dealt certain hands, and other people get dealt other things, other opportunities that some of us never experienced. I get that.
Yeah.
I also just know from personal experience, focusing on what I didn't get or what opportunities weren't afforded to me has never translated into any more opportunities for me.
Oh,
it's just stolen a lot of my joy.
Stolen a lot of your joy.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I'm sure you have actually experienced and examples of that, that it's that black hole or that kind of rabbit trail of focusing on what shoulda, coulda, woulda,
right.
Or how unfair this is.
Yeah.
And that's never translated into anything good for me anyway.
Yeah.
I've never had that happen.
How important do you feel, you kind of led me to this one, how important do you feel that gratitude is at whatever stage of life we are? Is that like, I don't want it to be just a platitude, like just be thankful for everything in your life, but how important is that as a licensed therapist?
Gratitude is a very, very common topic, I would say, in a lot of, but it depends on the season that a client or a patient is in. It depends on what they're dealing with or working with,
Yeah.
For instance, somebody who comes in with trauma, the idea of gratitude seems pretty antithetical to where we're going to try to go, at least for quite a while.
Yes.
Right? But I can tell you as somebody myself who struggled with addiction, gratitude is there the whole way through. And gratitude appeared as soon as I turned the corner and got onto a genuine path of sobriety. Gratitude was present. And thankfully, I didn't feel like I had to like will myself into an attitude of gratitude. I feel like it was blessed and bestowed to me. I think temperamentally, I'm a pretty optimistic person by nature anyway.
That's not what your wife says. No, I'm kidding.
But she would actually say I'm annoyingly optimistic. So, yeah. But I think gratitude is so prevalent, and it can be such an antidote for our perspective. If we're struggling, if we feel like we're wallowing, self-pity is one of the more unattractive, like emotional or mental states to see a person in.
Yeah.
Right? Like when somebody is full of self-pity, we all kind of try to avoid that person.
Right.
It's such an icky kind of pitfall.
And it's icky for them.
It's icky for them. It's icky for us. Like no one likes it. And we can all fall into it. And not for real reasons either. There's definitely some valid reasons that people can definitely fall into that.
Yeah.
But what's it doing for us? How's it helping? What's it doing for you? Right. And there's a difference between, we think about the idea of catharsis, right? If something is cathartic, if we're, think about like venting, or you had a bad day at work, your boss is a jerk, whatever. You come home, you vent about it, right? Well, give yourself a couple minutes and vent about it. and you will feel better. That's a real thing.
Really?
But 45 minutes into the vent session, is it helping anymore, or are you keeping yourself stuck?
Are you getting madder and madder and more?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Or exactly. Or are you getting yourself even more worked up? You know, right? Or you know what? My wife heard the same venting story now 5 times, and she's sick of hearing me talk about it. I'm still worked up about it, but now she's upset, and now everyone's upset. And it's past the point of any kind of benefit, right?
Right.
And now it's just injurious. It's not helping me or anyone around me.
Is that something that we've picked up from parents, or I mean, people do? We just kind of get into like a little. I'm going to gripe about this. Like every time somebody asks about it, I'm going to gripe about it. And
I don't know if it's increased. I mean, maybe it has just because of like technology and social media and right.
Yes,
but I
fire
think
each other up.
Yeah, and we can hop on the bandwagon. And who doesn't love a good rant from time to time, you know? But people by nature, we do tend to be a little neurotic, meaning we tend to be more influenced by negative emotion than positive emotion, right? So the example I'll give you is how many times, and maybe you've never left a review anywhere, but how many times have you had a just a decent enough, a pretty good experience at a restaurant, and you've gone online and you've left a review at a restaurant?
Yeah.
Versus when you've had a really bad experience, how many times you go leave a review?
Oh,
right?
boy.
And what's amazing is like we do reviews for Family Care Center. We have a great, you know, I think we're at a 4.8 on Google and Psychology Today star reviews is our average, right? We have lots of therapists and prescribers who they will have dozens of 5-star reviews. Oh, so-and-so's been brilliant. They've really helped me. I can't recommend this provider or Family Care Center enough. And then they'll have one bad review, a patient they just didn't click with, or maybe that patient was looking for something in particular that the provider didn't think was right for them. And they
True.
And they said, you know, that's not what I'm here to do. That's not what I can do for you. Like, that's not going to work. You'll have to find someone else, kind of thing. And they didn't like that. So they leave a bad review. That provider could get 10 5-star reviews that week and 1-star review. And they go, yeah, but that 1-star review.
I have to revise everything I'm doing.
They get hyper focused on that one bit of negative feedback, right? Somebody can pay you 10 compliments and you get one piece of criticism, and you're hyper focused on that one little bit of criticism.
Wow.
And we're all kind of that way a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, we all kind of lean that way into that. The negative emotion tends to kind of hit us a little deeper and affect us a little more than positive emotion does.
Well, we're running out of time for this program. There's still groups that we want to look at, including military members and former military members.
Yeah.
In future episodes. But I want to ask one of the things that so before we wrap up, I want to mention that, like that 1-star review, for example, or the one criticism you get out of 10 compliments. How can we stop taking it to heart so much, what somebody else thinks about us or says about us, or especially if they say it in public, we're embarrassed.
Sure. So I would say taking a very pragmatic approach, because we're already very much in our emotional mind, right? Mm-hmm. So let's try to tap into our wise mind. Let's try to get really pragmatic. The first question, if you find yourself offended at somebody's criticism or something negative they gave you or said about you, you need to ask yourself if it's true. Because if it's not true, you have no business being offended about it. Also, the source, like why are you accepting criticism from somebody you would never ask advice from?
Oh,
right.
That applies to so many situations.
Oh my gosh, strangers on the internet, and you're letting them wreck your day.
Oh my gosh, and talk about it for weeks right? and weeks.
But if it's someone you know, right, or what they said is true, those are the bits of criticism that can actually hurt a little bit.
Yes.
Like, oh, they called me a name, but it highlights this very thing that I'm actually genuinely insecure about.
Well, again, we're out of time, but we're going to address some more issues in our next version with David Wood, licensed therapist and regional director of Family Care Center, the largest outpatient mental health provider in Tennessee. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I love it.
Please make sure you join us again next week. I'm Anna Marie De La Vega. That's Focus.